there are 5 reasons why I think there might be a bit of a bounce in the market. It might not even be a huge bounce, but it's going to be something where support could hold and we could get a bit of a baby bounce. So I'm going to give you guys my explanation for it. I'm not saying this is going to bounce back and start retesting the highs here, but what I am saying is that there should be a bit of a baby bounce. All right, so I'm going to explain my reasonings for that. We're going to take a look at the S&P 500, the NASDAQ 100, the Russell 2000, the dollar, the bonds, and all of those other reasons. All right, so the beginning of the video, we're just going to simply go over those reasons, and then we're going to take a look at the overall market right afterward. All right, first things first, this is the FTSE 100. This is the UK markets. Basically, we're trading very overextended outside the lower level of the Bollinger Band. All right, so when this happens, generally it is very bearish. And if we continue falling like this, then a bounce is going to be imminent. So similar to what happened over here, we ended up falling a bit lower afterward, and then we bounced. Similar to what ended up happening here, we could fall lower, but then we will end up bouncing, and that'll end up painting a bit of a bottom for the FTSE at least, right? So the FTSE is the first reason why there could be a bit of a bounce happening soon. The second reason, very similar to the FTSE, is the Hang Seng. So the Chinese markets are obviously taking a hit because of the real estate and everything like that, but it's very similar. So we're trading outside of the lower Bollinger Bands, which shows extreme overextension to the downside. And when we had extreme overextensions to the downside on the Chinese markets, it can maintain itself for much longer than the US markets can maintain themselves to the downside, but it also ends up bouncing. Okay, so this is the other reason why there could be a bit of a bounce in the overall market soon, right? So the FTSE and the Hang Seng. Okay, next, Tesla. Okay, so Tesla is also similarly very overextended to the downside. It opened and closed outside the lower level of the bands. And if we get another open to the downside, it's going to remind me a lot about Nvidia. So right now, Tesla, okay, so the similarities between Tesla and Nvidia. Tesla has been very, very bearish, right? It often does not trade outside the lower level of the bands. And when it does, and when it gets very overextended to the downside, there's always a bounce, okay? So then it just becomes a matter of not trying to catch a bounce for something too short term. So buying calls for a week or two out is a bit more risky. Buying calls for over a month out of the money is much better. So this reminds me a lot about Nvidia. So Tesla, winner, opened outside the lower Bollinger Bands, showed a lot of weakness, similar to Nvidia. Opened outside the lower Bollinger Band, showed a lot of weakness, fell even lower, and then bounced. So that's what I'm expecting to happen on Tesla soon. If we end up falling even lower tomorrow, that'd be great. It would just play along with the entire thesis that I have. So Tesla, we could be playing Tesla bullish, hopefully tomorrow. But intraday, obviously, we can continue falling lower. But getting some swings on Tesla would be really, really good in my opinion. So that's that. That's the third reason. The fourth reason is the Russell 2000. So the Russell 2000 is obviously also very overextended to the downside. And it will almost definitely open outside of the lower Bollinger Bands tomorrow. When that happens, that is also extreme overextension to the downside. So with those things comparatively, right? The Russell should be giving a bit of a bounce. Tesla should be getting a bit. So I'm not saying these bounces are going to be huge, right? What I'm saying is there should be like even maybe something like this, where yeah, we're falling, but we could have 2 small like green days or a bit of a green day bounce back to like a level of resistance. So we could end up bouncing a bit. I'm not saying it's going to be huge, but we have to be cognizant. This is not a good shorting opportunity. This is starting to get very overextended to the downside. And when this happens, you just look at everything as a whole, and that is what things are basically showing at the moment, that there should be a bit of a bounce. And then last but not least, we have to take a look at the dollar. So the dollar is continuing to break upwards. It's starting to get close to the upper level of the Bollinger Band. And as it gets closer to that level, it's going to start showing resistance. And if we have a huge day on the dollar tomorrow and we continue to break upwards, then that could mean a pullback. That could mean a time for a pullback on the dollar. But right now, pragmatically, right, the dollar is showing strength. It didn't close above yesterday's, Monday's high. So there's still more room to go to the upside on the dollar, and it's not showing the most. There's still a lot more bearish room on the dollar, okay? But for these other indices and for Tesla, you know, it would be interesting if we have another huge red day, even into Friday. So if Thursday and Friday were both very, very bearish, and Tesla, we end up getting a bit like of a move. So for example, if tomorrow we get a bit of a bounce, we reclaim back into the Bollinger Bands, and then Friday the dollar is just super green. That would cause Tesla to become very red again, close outside the Bollinger Bands again, and then Monday we open up even lower on Tesla and then bounce. These are all possibilities. These are all possibilities. And Tesla, so obviously, like, Tesla can fall dramatically. Even if it's trading outside the lower bands like this, it can continue to fall dramatically. So for example, back here, when it first opened outside the bands, it was at 164, right? 165. We ended up falling back down to around 150. So that was a substantial move to the downside, and it was at least another 7% down. So that can still happen. So it's important to just keep that in mind. But yeah, you know, aside from that, that's basically everything that we're looking at. We could take a look at the bonds. The bonds aren't really doing much to help the situation. The bonds still look bearish. We're closed below levels of support. We're showing more weakness. The MACD is starting to, it's falling and making new lows, and the MACD is not even crossing below yet. We haven't gotten a bearish crossover to the downside on the MACD, which is very bearish. But again, this is not really a place where you would want to go short on the bonds. This is starting to look very close to a falling wedge, and falling wedges on the bonds, falling wedges are bullish, so we should end up getting a bit of a bounce soon. So we're gonna have to see what ends up happening on the bonds, but this is not an opportunity to go short. So yeah, those are basically my 5 reasons, and we can quickly just go ahead and take a look at the S&P and the NASDAQ. So the SPY is not closed outside the lower bands as much as the IWM, right? But we're still showing a lot of weakness. The main level that people are going to want to start to go long around is 437 to 438. So especially at this trend line over here at 437.68, which was the prior levels of resistance and support during June. So that's going to be very, very important for the SPY. And yeah, honestly, tomorrow we should get a bit of a bounce to around 441 on the SPY. I'd be very, very surprised. I'd be very, very surprised if it just capitulates even lower. If it does, then that is just an enormous buying opportunity, and I would love it, to be honest. That'd be great. Yeah, we could take a look at the NASDAQ. Obviously, it's not showing as much. It's not overextended to the downside as much. And yeah, it's not really giving as much. So the move to the upside is going to be determined by whether or not the IWM can bounce and whether the SPY can hold this level of support alongside these other large tech stocks like Apple, Nvidia, Tesla. If those are going to bounce, then it's going to help the NASDAQ maintain itself as well. So yeah, pretty interesting day. We're gonna have to see what everything else, like what the next steps are for everything. But so far, things are moving in a way where things should be getting a bounce soon. And I could be completely wrong, but that's the way that it's looking. So yeah, you know, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Please make sure to like, comment, subscribe, do all that good stuff, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Thank you.